The scanner flared, distraction detected. She caught the instructor's thrown blade and kept working. The orbital academy floated above the pale curve of the planet like a ring of quiet light. From the outside it looked calm, almost peaceful. Inside it was never silent. The training hall was wide and bright, built to fit many species at once. Gravity was tuned to a gentle standard, but even that felt strange to some of the cadets. Long tables filled the room, each one covered with tools, components, and glowing instruction panels. The air carried the soft hum of machines and the faint sounds of breathing from many different lungs. Alina Ward stood at one of the tables near the center. She was human, which already made her noticeable. Humans were not rare in the galaxy, but they were often underestimated. Compared to the taller species or the ones with natural armor or glowing eyes, humans looked fragile. Soft skin, no claws, no extra limbs, just 2 hands, 2 eyes, and a face that showed emotion too easily. Alina did not look special. She wore the same gray cadet uniform as everyone else. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple knot. Her face was calm, almost bored, as she focused on the task in front of her. The exam had already been running for 20 minutes. On the table lay the open shell of a microreactor regulator, no larger than a human fist but far more complex inside. Thin energy filaments crossed like veins. Crystal nodes pulsed softly, waiting to be aligned. One mistake could cause a failure, not an explosion but a full shutdown. Precision mattered. Above each cadet, unseen by the naked eye, scanners watched everything. They tracked heart rate, muscle tension, eye movement, neural activity, and attention focus. The Academy believed that true intelligence showed itself through clean, narrow concentration. One task, one goal. Anything else was labeled distraction. At the far end of the hall stood Instructor Krelthes. He was tall, with jointed limbs and a plated exoskeleton that reflected the lights. His species valued discipline and direct attention above all things. His many eyes moved constantly, checking displays that only he could see. "Cadets," his voice echoed, sharp and clear, "this is not a test of speed. It is a test of control. Maintain focus. External stimuli are irrelevant." Most cadets stiffened. Alina did not look up. Her fingers moved carefully, rotating a crystal node by less than a millimeter. She listened, but she did not stop. The scanners continued their silent work. Several tables away, a cadet from a winged species twitched as a warning tone sounded. Their display flashed, signaling a loss of focus. The instructor marked it without comment. Alina's table remained quiet. She adjusted a filament, then another. Her breathing stayed slow and steady. She was aware of the room without thinking about it. The hum of machines, the shifting weight of the station, the presence of others, it was normal to her. Suddenly, a sharp tone cut through the hall. A bright warning symbol flared in the air above Alina's station. Distraction detected. Several heads turned. Alina paused for half a second, not because she was startled, but because she needed to seat the component correctly. She did not look up. She did not react. Instructor Krelthes turned fully toward her. A human triggering a distraction alert during a precision task was not unusual. Humans were known to let their attention wander. What was unusual was that Alina's performance metrics were still perfect. He narrowed his eyes. To his species, attention could be tested directly. From a rack beside him, he selected a practice blade. It was not sharp enough to cut deeply, but fast, balanced, and very visible. The motion was smooth and controlled as he flicked it across the room toward Alina. Gasps rippled through the hall. The blade spun, humming softly as it crossed the space between them. Alina's left hand moved. She did not look up. She did not stop her right hand from working. Her fingers closed around the blade's handle in midair with practiced ease, stopping its motion completely. She placed it gently on the table beside her tools. Then she continued aligning the reactor core as if nothing had happened. The hall fell silent. The warning symbol above her table blinked once, then stayed lit. "Distraction detected," it repeated, almost confused. Instructor Krelthas froze. No cadet had ever responded like that. The blade had not been meant to injure, but it was meant to startle. Startled responses always disrupted focus. Always. Yet Alina's heart rate barely changed. Her neural activity showed no spike of panic. Her task accuracy did not drop. Around the room, cadets stared openly now. Some looked impressed. Others looked unsettled. A few alien species shifted uncomfortably, instinctively alarmed by the casual way she had intercepted a weapon. Krelthas stepped closer, his heavy footfalls echoing. "Human cadet," he said, his voice low. "Explain." Alina finished seeding the crystal node. Only then did she straighten and look up at him. "Yes, instructor," she asked calmly. "You were flagged as distracted." She glanced briefly at the warning symbol, then back to him. "Yes. You intercepted a thrown object without breaking task flow." "Yes. Why?" Alina considered the question. "It was in my space," she said. "I caught it." That was not the question. She frowned slightly, not in anger but in thought. "I don't understand," she admitted. "I didn't stop working." A murmur spread through the room. Krelthas stared at her. "Your attention was divided." "No," Alina said gently. "It was." The instructor's eyes flicked to the scanner readouts only he could see. They showed something impossible. According to the system, Alina had been distracted continuously for the last 40 seconds. According to the task data, she had performed flawlessly. "That is a contradiction," he said. Alina shrugged. "Maybe the scanner doesn't measure what you think it does." That earned a few quiet clicks and whispers from other instructors watching remotely. Krelthas straightened. "Resume your task," he ordered. Alina nodded and turned back to the table. Her fingers moved again, precise and steady. The warning remained. Minutes passed. Other cadets made mistakes. Minor ones, but mistakes all the same. Adjustments were too slow. Filaments slipped. Focus wavered. Alina completed her assembly first. She sealed the reactor shell and stepped back. A soft green light indicated success. Krelthas ended the exam early. "Stand by," he ordered. The cadets remained at their stations, but the energy in the room had changed. Eyes followed Alina openly now, some with curiosity, some with something close to fear. Krelthas approached her table again, picking up the blade she had caught. "You did not react as expected," he said. Alina met his gaze without challenge. "With respect, instructor, I did react, just not in a way your system noticed." "Explain," she thought for a moment. "On Earth, where I grew up, you learn early that things can happen around you while you're busy. Noise, movement, danger. You don't stop what you're doing every time something happens. You just handle it. That is inefficient." "It's survival," she replied simply. Krelthas said nothing. He dismissed the cadets soon after, but Alina was told to remain. When the hall emptied, the silence felt heavier than before. "You may have triggered a deeper evaluation," the instructor said at last. Alina nodded. "Am I in trouble?" "No," he said slowly. "But your presence raises questions." She waited. "The Academy assumes that peak performance requires isolation of attention," he continued. "Your data suggests otherwise." Alina allowed herself a small smile. "Humans are good at doing more than one thing at a time." "That is not what the data shows," he corrected. "It shows you doing one thing while monitoring many." She tilted her head. "Isn't that normal?" For the first time, Krelthas hesitated. "No," he said, "it is not." The warning symbol above her station finally faded, but the question it raised did not. As Alina left the hall, unaware of how many observers were now reviewing her data, one thing was clear to the Academy. The scanner had not malfunctioned. It had encountered something it did not understand. And this was only the beginning. The Academy did not sleep, but it did slow down. After the incident in the training hall, Alina Ward returned to her assigned quarters. The room was small and clean, built to human scale as a courtesy, though few humans stayed long enough to notice. The walls glowed softly, adjusting to her presence. A narrow bed, a desk, a storage unit. Nothing extra. Elena sat on the edge of the bed and let out a slow breath. She did not feel proud. She did not feel scared. Mostly she felt confused. To her, nothing unusual had happened. On Earth, she had studied in noisy classrooms, repaired machines while people argued nearby, and learned to focus while life continued around her. Catching a thrown object without stopping her work felt natural, almost boring, but the looks on the other cadets' faces replayed in her mind. They had looked at her like she was dangerous. A soft chime sounded at the door. "Elena Ward," a calm, synthetic voice said. "You are requested in Observation Chamber 3. She sighed quietly and stood. "On my way." The corridors of the academy curved gently, designed to accommodate many body types. As she walked, she noticed something new. She was not alone. A small floating sensor drifted several meters behind her, silent and unobtrusive. She pretended not to notice it, but she was aware of its position at all times. Speed, distance, angle. It followed her all the way to the chamber. Observation Chamber 3 was circular, with a transparent floor that looked down into the glowing depths of the station. Several instructors waited inside, along with two beings she had never seen before. One was tall and thin, wrapped in layered fabric that shifted color slowly. The other was low and wide, with multiple arms resting calmly against its body. Instructor Krelthes stood apart from the others. "Elena Ward," he said. "Enter." She stepped inside. The door sealed behind her with a soft hiss. "Please stand at the center," said another instructor, this one smooth-skinned and pale, with eyes like polished stone. Elena did as instructed. No restraints, no threat, but the air felt heavier. "We have reviewed your data," the pale instructor said. "Extensively," Elena nodded. "Okay. You were flagged for distraction during a precision task," Krelthes added. "Repeatedly." "Yes," Elena said. "I know." "And yet your output exceeded Academy standards by 12%. She waited. "This contradiction concerns us," the tall, fabric-wrapped being said. Its voice sounded layered, as if more than one tone spoke at once. "Our systems define distraction as a loss of efficiency." Elena frowned slightly. "Maybe that definition is wrong." There was a pause. "That is a bold statement," the pale instructor said. "It's not meant to be," Elena replied. "It's just possible." Krelthes gestured and the room changed. The transparent floor darkened, replaced by a glowing projection. Elena found herself standing in the center of a simulated workspace. Tools appeared in the air, hovering. A familiar microreactor assembly rested before her. "This is a controlled test," Krelthes said. "You will complete the assembly again." Elena nodded. "All right." The moment she touched the first component, the scanners activated. This time she could feel them more clearly. A faint pressure behind her eyes, a warmth along her spine. The floating sensor she had seen earlier joined several others, forming a slow orbit around her. She focused on the work. At first, nothing changed. Then the room began to shift. Lights brightened and dimmed in uneven patterns. Sounds echoed from unseen directions. Alien languages overlapped, some sharp, some musical, some low and rumbling. Elena's hands kept moving. A warning flashed in the corner of her vision. "Distraction detected." She ignored it. The gravity tilted slightly, not enough to cause alarm, but enough to force constant adjustment. Tools drifted, requiring quick correction. Elena adjusted without thinking. She was aware of everything. The sound patterns, the light changes, the tool's movement. The feel of the components beneath her fingers. It did not feel like doing many things at once. It felt like being awake. "Increase stimulus," the fabric-wrapped being said. The noise grew louder. Alarms joined the soundscape. Visual data streamed across the air, flashing numbers and symbols in multiple alien formats. Another warning. "Distraction detected." Elena seated a crystal node. Her heart rate rose slightly, but her breathing stayed even. Her neural activity shows expansion, not narrowing, the pale instructor said quietly. That is not possible, another voice replied. It is happening. A sudden movement caught Elena's peripheral vision. A tool slipped free from its field and fell toward the floor. She caught it with her foot, flicked it back into her hand, and continued working. The warnings stacked now, filling the air like angry red marks. Distraction detected. Distraction detected. Distraction detected. Elena finished the assembly. A green light appeared. Silence fell. The simulation faded, leaving the instructor staring at her. How do you define focus? The pale instructor asked. Elena wiped her hands on her uniform. Focus is knowing what matters most and not panicking about the rest. That implies hierarchy of attention, the fabric-wrapped being said. Yes, Elena agreed. Some things are more important than others, but that doesn't mean you ignore everything else. Krelthes folded his arms. Our systems are designed to filter. Humans don't filter the same way, Elena said. We prioritize on the fly. Another pause. Repeat the test, Krelthes said. They repeated it 3 times. Each time the stimuli changed. Heat fluctuations, sudden vibrations, simulated emergencies in adjacent rooms. Recorded cries for help layered into the noise. Elena's performance did not drop. Her distraction warnings increased. The contradiction grew impossible to ignore. At last, the pale instructor raised a hand. Enough. The sensors powered down. Elena Ward, Krelthes said, you will answer honestly. I will, she said. Are you suppressing fear responses? No. Are you trained for this? Not officially. Then why does chaos not disrupt you? Elena thought carefully before answering. Because chaos is normal to us, she said. On Earth, silence usually means something is wrong. That statement unsettled the room more than anything else. The wide, many-armed being shifted. Your species evolved in constant threat conditions. Yes, Elena said. Weather. Predators, other humans, accidents, noise, crowds. And yet you still create, the pale instructor said softly. We had to, Elena replied. Stopping wasn't an option. Krelthes turned to the others. Our scanners are labeling threat awareness as distraction. That suggests a fundamental error, the fabric-wrapped being said. Or a fundamental difference, Elena offered. They dismissed her soon after, but not to rest. Instead, she was reassigned. Her new schedule appeared on her wrist display the moment she stepped into the corridor. Advanced cognitive stress trials, joint species simulations, emergency response observation. She swallowed. This was bigger than a class. As she walked, she noticed more sensors now, hidden in the walls, drifting above, embedded in the floor. She felt watched, measured, evaluated, but she also noticed something else. Other cadets watched her too. Some looked curious. Some avoided her. One small, four-eyed cadet hesitated, then hurried to catch up with her. You are the human, the cadet said nervously. Yes, Elena replied. You caught the blade. I did. The cadet's eyes blinked rapidly. Does your species not feel fear? Elena smiled gently. We do, we just work through it. The cadet seemed to think about that deeply. That evening, as Elena sat at her desk reviewing her new assignments, a message arrived. Priority level, high. Sender, Academy oversight. Your cognitive profile does not fit existing classifications. Further observation required. Elena leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. She had come to the academy to learn. Instead, she had become a question. Somewhere deep in the station, analysts debated models, rewrote assumptions, and argued over data streams filled with red warning symbols that meant nothing anymore. The scanners continued to flare, but the academy was starting to understand that the problem was not the human. It was the system watching her, and the more they watched, the clearer it became. Humans were not distracted. They were ready. And whatever test came next would not be a classroom exercise. The next phase did not begin in a classroom. Elena learned that when her wrist display woke her before rest cycle ended. The light was brighter than normal, the tone sharper. Not an alarm, but close enough to pull her instantly awake. "Cadet Elena Ward," the system said. "Report to Sector 12. Immediate." She sat up, already alert. Sector 12 was not listed on standard academy maps. That alone told her this was no longer just training. As she dressed and stepped into the corridor, she noticed that the station felt different. The hum beneath the floor was uneven, like a machine under strain. Lights adjusted a fraction slower than usual. The academy still looked calm, but it felt alert, like a held breath. 2 escorts met her at the lift. They were not guards, just attendants, but their posture was formal and their eyes watched everything. The lift descended far deeper than Alina expected. When the doors opened, she stepped into a wide control ring overlooking what looked like a section of a space station interior. Not a simulation room, not a projection. Real walls, real equipment, real airlocks. Cadets from many species stood scattered across the floor, each wearing standard uniforms, each looking confused. Instructor Krelthas was there, along with several others Alina recognized from Observation Chamber 3. But there were also new faces. Older. Heavier with authority. A tall figure stepped forward, its voice calm but carrying easily. "This is not a test in the way you are used to," it said. "This is an evaluation." Murmurs spread. "You are aware," the voice continued, "that the Academy prepares individuals for roles across the galaxy: engineering, diplomacy, crisis response." Alina felt a subtle tightening in her chest. "Sector 12 is a live response environment," the speaker said. "Systems can fail. People can panic. Decisions matter." A pause. "This exercise will measure how different species function when plans collapse." The floor lights shifted from white to amber. Alina noticed something important. The scanners were active, not the usual passive ones. These were stronger, deeper. She could feel them pressing into her awareness, mapping everything. Krelthas's eyes flicked toward her briefly. She understood. This was about her. The task began without warning. A deep vibration rolled through the sector. Lights flickered. A warning tone sounded, not sharp but constant, like a distant siren. "Power instability detected," the system announced. Several cadets stiffened. A panel along the far wall burst open, releasing a cloud of harmless vapor that obscured visibility. Emergency lights activated, casting long shadows. "Eliminate the fault," the speaker said. "Work together." Some cadets rushed toward the nearest console. Others froze, overwhelmed by the sudden change. Elena did not move immediately. She listened. She watched how people reacted. Who shouted? Who stayed quiet? Which systems were loudest? Then she moved. She headed toward a junction where multiple cables converged, not because she knew the problem, but because complex failures often showed symptoms there. A small, insect-like cadet scuttled nearby, clearly distressed. "I can't read the display," it said rapidly. "Too many alerts." Alina crouched beside it without slowing her hands. "Which alert is new?" she asked. The cadet hesitated, then pointed. "That one." Alina nodded. "Then that's the one that matters. Ignore the rest." She rerouted a power flow manually, stabilizing one line. The vibration eased slightly. Across the room, another group argued over procedure. Their voices overlapped, growing louder, more frantic. "Noise doesn't mean urgency," Alina muttered to herself. The scanners flared. "Distraction detected." She felt it register: the arguing, the alarms, the movement behind her. She kept working. A panel above her loosened, rattling. Without looking up, she shifted her stance, ready to catch it if it fell. It didn't, but she had already adjusted. Her hands continued moving. The power fault spread instead of shrinking. "This scenario is escalating," one instructor said quietly from the observation ring. "It should," another replied. "This is the point." A simulated evacuation signal began to sound. That changed everything. Cadets reacted instinctively now. Some tried to help imaginary civilians. Others abandoned repairs to move toward exits. The system was designed to overwhelm. Alina straightened and raised her voice, not shouting but firm. "Stop moving," she said. A few cadets turned toward her, startled. "The exits aren't blocked yet," she continued. "If we stabilize power, evacuation won't be needed." "How do you know?" someone demanded. "Because secondary systems are still live," Alina replied. "You can hear it in the floor." That made no sense to most of them, but the insect-like cadet nodded. "She's right," it said. "Vibration pattern hasn't changed." That was enough. They followed her lead. Alina assigned tasks without hesitation. Not orders, but suggestions spoken with confidence. "Check this conduit, hold that panel, reduce load here." People listened. The scanners screamed. Distraction detected. Her cognitive load chart spiked higher than any recorded before. Her efficiency did not drop. In the observation ring, silence grew thick. "She is coordinating while repairing," the pale instructor said, "and monitoring environmental changes," another added. "And responding to social stress signals," said a third. Krelthes watched Alina closely. "She is not dividing attention," he said slowly. "She is expanding it." The failure reached its peak. A simulated hull breach warning sounded, forcing cadets to seal bulkheads. The environment grew colder. Lights dimmed further. This was the breaking point for most species. Alina felt the cold, not as discomfort but as data. She adjusted power routing to compensate. She redirected heat flow manually, hands moving faster now, not from panic but urgency. A cadet slipped on the floor. She caught them without turning fully, steadying them, then went back to work. Distraction detected. Distraction detected. The words had lost meaning. At last the vibration stopped. The alarms quieted one by one. The amber lights returned to white. "Scenario complete," the system announced. The room stood still. Cadets looked around, stunned, some breathing hard, others shaking slightly. Many stared at Alina. She leaned against a console for a moment, feeling the delayed weight of effort settle into her muscles. Her hands trembled slightly now that there was time for it. Krelthes descended from the observation ring. He walked slowly, deliberately, until he stood in front of her. "That scenario exceeded projected difficulty," he said. Alina nodded. "It felt like it." "You maintained task efficiency under escalating chaos." "Yes." "You coordinated others while performing manual repairs." "Yes." "You responded to environmental, social, and mechanical inputs simultaneously." She shrugged lightly. "That's what was happening." He studied her. "The scanners flagged continuous distraction from the first moment," he said. Alina met his gaze. "And yet the sector is stable." A long silence followed. The pale instructor joined them. "This was not a standard exercise," they said. "It was a filter." "For what?" Alina asked. "For identifying species suitable for real-time crisis environments," the instructor replied. "Most require strict command structures or reduced stimulus." "And humans?" Alina asked. "We do not know yet," the instructor admitted. Krelthes turned slightly, addressing the others. "The blade incident was not an accident," Alina stiffened. "I thought so." "It was a probe," he continued. "This was the follow-up." "And?" she asked. "And you did not fail," he said. That felt heavier than praise. As the cadets were dismissed, Alina remained behind once more. This time she was not nervous. "You understand," Krelthes said, "that this data will not remain within the academy." Alina exhaled slowly. "I figured. Your species has been categorized as cognitively inefficient under stress for several cycles." She smiled faintly. "We get that a lot." "That classification may change," he said, "because of me." "Because of what you represent," he corrected. Alina looked back at the now quiet sector. Tools lay scattered, panels still open, signs of chaos neatly resolved. "Humans don't wait for quiet to think," she said. "We think so we can make things quiet again." Krelthes said nothing. Later, alone in her quarters, Alina finally allowed herself to feel tired. She sat on the edge of her bed, hands resting loosely in her lap. Her wrist display blinked. New message, priority restricted. Human cognitive response under chaos exceeds predictive models. Recommend expanded evaluation. She closed her eyes. This was no longer about exams. Somewhere beyond the academy, real stations broke. Real people panicked. Real systems failed without warning. And now the galaxy was asking a dangerous question. What happens when humans are not removed from chaos, but placed at the center of it? The scanners would keep flaring. The warnings would keep sounding. But Alina already knew the truth they were slowly learning. Chaos did not distract humans. It focused them. And the Academy had only just begun to understand what that meant. The change did not come with an announcement. It arrived quietly, hidden in schedules, rewritten protocols, and meetings Alina was never invited to attend. The Academy continued its routines on the surface, but underneath, something fundamental had shifted. Alina felt it the moment she stepped into the corridor the next morning. People moved differently around her now. Cadets did not avoid her, but they watched, some with respect, some with unease. A few with clear relief, as if her presence meant things might be handled if something went wrong. More sensors followed her than ever before, but they kept their distance, as if unsure how close they were allowed to get. Her new assignment did not list classes. It listed scenarios, emergency logistics, multi-species coordination, infrastructure recovery, decision-making under uncertainty. None of it was framed as training. It was framed as observation. Her first scenario of the day placed her in a command room overlooking a simulated trade hub. The display showed dozens of docking lanes, energy flows, life support readings, and civilian traffic patterns layered on top of each other. For most cadets, this amount of information would require filters. For Alina, it felt like standing in a busy street back home. The exercise began with a single failure. One power relay flickered and dropped out of sync. Not enough to trigger alarms, but enough to cause delays. Alina noticed it immediately. She did not rush to fix it. She watched how the system reacted, how traffic slowed, how secondary systems compensated. She waited for the moment when intervention would matter most. The scanners flared softly. Distraction detected. She ignored it. When she finally acted, her changes were small. A reroute here, a timing adjustment there. The system stabilized without ever realizing it had been in danger. In the observation chamber above, instructors exchanged looks. "She waited," one of them said. "She understood the cascade," another replied. "She did not panic," Krelthes added. "She anticipated." The pale instructor leaned forward. "Her brain activity shows continuous threat monitoring without stress amplification." "That should not be possible," someone said. "And yet," Krelthes replied, "it is consistent." The next scenarios grew more complex. Not louder, not faster, messier. Conflicting orders, incomplete data, emotional responses from simulated crew, cultural misunderstandings layered into technical failures. Alina navigated them all the same way. She listened. She observed. She acted only when needed. When a simulated alien engineer froze, overwhelmed by overlapping alerts, Alina stepped in quietly, redirecting tasks without drawing attention to the failure. When a diplomatic channel erupted into argument, she let it burn itself out while she stabilized systems in the background. The scanners recorded constant distraction, but the outcomes were better than any model predicted. At the end of the third scenario, the system paused longer than usual before announcing completion. That delay, one analyst said, was the system recalculating success parameters. Krelthes crossed his arms. "It does not know how to score this." "That," the pale instructor replied, "is the problem." Word began to spread beyond the academy. Quietly at first, data packets sent under neutral classifications, reports framed as anomalies rather than conclusions, but analysts noticed. Human cognitive profiles were being reviewed again, old assumptions pulled from archives, performance logs re-examined. The story was always the same. Humans underperformed in sterile, quiet environments. Humans excelled when things went wrong. This had been seen before. In mining disasters, in ship malfunctions, in first contact incidents that had gone badly, but it had never been named, until now. Alina was called back to Observation Chamber 3. This time there were no simulations waiting for her, only people. The room was fuller than before. Representatives from multiple departments, some civilian, some military, some whose roles were not stated. Krelthes stood beside her rather than across from her. "Alina Ward," the tall fabricrap being said, "you have been observed for several cycles." Alina nodded. "I figured. Our models have failed to classify your performance accurately," it continued. "That's okay," Alina said. "Models get things wrong." A few heads tilted at that. "We define distraction as a loss of task focus," the pale instructor said, "but your species appears to treat environmental input differently." "Yes," Alina replied. "We don't see it as interference. We see it as information." "In most species," another voice said, "additional stimuli reduce efficiency." "In humans," Alina said gently, "lack of stimuli makes us uneasy." Silence followed. Krelthes spoke next. "Your species evolved on a world where danger was constant but unpredictable. Threats did not announce themselves." Alina nodded. "You learned to notice everything. And to keep working anyway," he added. "Yes," the fabricrap being shifted. "This trait has strategic implications." Alina frowned slightly. "I'm not a soldier." "No," it agreed. "But your species may be." That made her uncomfortable. She chose her words carefully. "Humans don't look for chaos. We just don't shut down when it shows up." "That distinction matters," the pale instructor said. They dismissed her again, but this time with something close to respect. As she left, Krelthes walked beside her. "The Academy is revising its scanner definitions," he said. Alina raised an eyebrow. "Because of me?" "Because of humans," he corrected. "You simply made it undeniable." They stopped at an observation window overlooking the station's inner structure. Layers of metal and light curved away in quiet order. "Our systems flag distraction when attention widens," he continued. "But your performance improves." "Because we evolved to survive noise," Alina said. "Silence meant something had gone wrong." Krelthes considered that. "The blade," he said suddenly, "when I threw it." "You wanted to see if I would break focus," Alina replied. "Yes." "And instead," she said softly, "I treated it like just another thing happening." He inclined his head. That was the moment the classification failed. Over the next days, changes became visible. Academy scanners received updates. New categories appeared alongside old ones. Threat processing, environmental awareness, parallel attention stability. Human cadets who had struggled before suddenly performed better under revised evaluation rules. Their warning counts dropped. Their confidence rose. Non-human cadets trained alongside them began to adapt as well, learning to tolerate more noise, more uncertainty. The academy did not become chaotic. It became resilient. Alina noticed instructors changing how they taught. Less insistence on silence. More emphasis on adaptability, more room for movement, discussion, and unexpected inputs. The results spoke for themselves. Then came the message Alina had been expecting. Priority, high. Sender, External Oversight Council. Your presence is requested for advisory review. She stared at the words for a long moment. This was no longer about scanners. Somewhere out there, real stations would fail. Real crews would panic. Real lives would depend on decisions made in noise and confusion. And the galaxy had finally noticed something humans had always known. You do not wait for calm to act. You act so calm can return. As Alina prepared to leave her quarters, she glanced once more at the academy behind her. The place that had tried to measure her and instead learned from her. The scanners would still flare. Warnings would still sound. But now, when they did, someone would ask a different question. Not why is this human distracted, but what does this human see that we do not? And that question would change everything. The request from the External Oversight Council did not come with urgency, but Alina felt its weight immediately. She was escorted off the Academy station aboard a small transport vessel, quiet and efficient. No ceremony. No announcements. Just a shift from observer to observed on a much larger scale. The vessel docked with a massive orbital platform that did not belong to any single species. It was older than the Academy, layered with repairs from different eras and cultures. Alina felt it the moment she stepped inside. This station had history, and history meant things had gone wrong here before. The council chamber was wide and open, with representatives seated in a ring. Some were familiar species, others were new to her. All of them watched closely as Alina took her place at the center. "You are not here as a cadet," the pale instructor's voice echoed from a projection at the edge of the chamber. "You are here as a reference point." Alina nodded slowly. "For what?" "For a classification decision," said a deep, calm voice from across the ring. "One that will affect how your species is viewed in future crisis protocols." That made her uneasy. "I didn't come here to represent all humans," she said carefully. "No," the voice agreed. "But you revealed something we could not ignore." Before she could respond, the station shuddered. Not violently. Not yet. Lights dimmed. The hum beneath the floor deepened. A familiar warning tone echoed through the chamber. Power instability detected. Several council members stiffened. Some reached instinctively for communication devices. "This is unexpected," one voice said. Alina tilted her head slightly, listening. The sound pattern was wrong. "This station is old," she said. That didn't sound like a simple relay issue. Another tremor rolled through the structure. Then alarms began to stack. Life support fluctuation, docking ring pressure variance, internal traffic disruption. The council chamber doors did not close, they were frozen. For a moment, everyone looked at the system displays. Then slowly several turned to Alina. She felt the scanners activate again, stronger than any before, deep searching. "Distraction detected," the system announced almost automatically. Alina exhaled. "Where's the nearest manual access?" she asked. A few council members hesitated. "She is not cleared," one began. "She is already processing," Krelthes's voice cut in from the projection. "Let her work." Alina moved before permission fully settled. The corridor outside the chamber was crowded with responders trying to coordinate. Voices overlapped, orders conflicted, systems lagged under load. Alina did not raise her voice. She listened. She felt the vibration through her boots. She counted the seconds between alarm pulses. She smelled faint, overheating insulation. "Primary power isn't the problem," she said to no one in particular. "It's feedback from secondary routing." That earned confused looks. She knelt by a maintenance panel and opened it manually. Her fingers moved with practiced ease, adjusting controls most species rarely touched. "Why are you bypassing the system?" an engineer asked sharply. "Because the system is arguing with itself," Alina replied calmly. Another shudder passed through the station, stronger this time. Somewhere far away, something locked down too late. "Distraction detected," the scanners repeated. Alina barely noticed. She was aware of everything now, the fear in voices behind her, the rhythm of failing machinery, the subtle shift in air pressure. She rerouted power, then stopped. "Wait," she said. Someone protested. "We don't have time." "We do," Alina said. "If we move now, we'll make it worse." She waited through one more alarm cycle, then acted. The vibration eased, not gone, but reduced. "That shouldn't have worked," the engineer muttered. "It did," Alina said. "Next problem." The council chamber remained unsecured, but people had stopped panicking. They watched her work, followed her without realizing it. A docking ring on the far side of the station began to fail next. Automated systems tried to compensate, overcorrected, and triggered conflicting responses. Elena closed her eyes for half a second, mapping the problem in her mind. "Shut down Dock 3's automation," she said. "That will cause delays across the platform," someone warned. "Yes," she agreed, "but it won't cause collapse." They hesitated. Krelthes's voice came through again. "Do it." They did. The alarms changed tone, lower, slower. The station was no longer spiraling. It was hurt but stable. Only then did Elena feel how tired she was. She leaned against a wall, letting her hands rest at her sides. The scanners flared one last time. "Distraction detected," she laughed softly. In the quiet that followed, the council reconvened, this time standing among responders and engineers instead of seated in a chamber. "You acted without command authority," one representative said. "Yes," Elena replied, "because waiting would have made things worse." "You processed conflicting data without pause," another said. "Yes. You remained effective under continuous alerts, noise, and social pressure." She nodded. "That's normal for us." The pale instructor's projection shimmered. "Our systems flagged you as distracted from start to finish." "And yet," Krelthes said, "the station stands." A long silence followed. Then the fabric being spoke. "We have reviewed centuries of data. Incidents where humans were present during system failures show a pattern." Elena looked up. "Humans do not calm environments before acting," it continued. "They act to calm environments." The council turned inward, exchanging quiet words. At last, the deep voice spoke again. "Humanity will be reclassified." Elena felt her chest tighten. "As what?" "As operational under chaos." The words hung in the air. "Your species will no longer be evaluated by narrow focus metrics," the voice continued. "Your so-called distractions will be recognized as parallel threat awareness." Elena let out a slow breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "This does not make humans superior," she said carefully. "No," the voice agreed. "It makes you necessary." Later, as systems stabilized fully and crews returned to normal duties, Elena stood alone near a viewport. The Academy station glimmered in the distance. Krelthas joined her. "The scanners have been updated across council space," he said. "They no longer issue warnings for expanded awareness," she smiled faintly. "So no more distraction detected." "They still flare," he admitted, "but now they log something else." "What's that?" "Human standard readiness." Elena chuckled quietly. A technician passed by and without looking tossed her a tool. She caught it easily and handed it back, still watching the stars. No one reacted. No alarm sounded. The galaxy had learned something important. Chaos was not the enemy of focus. For humans, it was the environment they were built to survive in. And when the universe inevitably broke again, as it always did, it would not ask humans to step aside and wait for calm. It would look for them, right in the middle of the noise.